In the last episode, we covered the acoustic treatment strategy for this room, showing the layout in SketchUp, as well as the design, absorption materials, acoustic modeling, and placement of each one of the modules. Now we're going to take a look at the tools and equipment that I use, and the materials we'll need to build these modules. So I'm just going to give you a quick flyby of the tools that I typically use on a build. I'm not sure I'm going to use every single one of these tools on this particular build, but it's better to have and not need than need and not have, so I brought everything. I've just got boxed up. This is all sanding supplies. I use a 5-inch Orbital sander, so these are all mostly sanding discs. These are all brad nails. These are all different depths of staples, the Aero T50 staples that we use for the fabric. And these are wood screws, all number 8 wood screws, but just different lengths of screws. I use gloves when handling wood just because you can get tear out and splinters, and that's a bad day. Hearing protection. The whole reason we're building a music studio is for using our ears, so use that. Safety glasses. I'm adamant about these. I just always wear them anytime I'm handling a tool, even if I don't think I need them. And these ones are actually anti-fog biking glasses, so they're pretty good. This big daddy is a new acquisition. This is my heavy duty router, and this is a Bosch router. It's a big honkin', super powerful router that I use when I need the big guns. I have a smaller trim router that I use for light work, but this guy also flips upside down and goes into a router table, a Bosch router table. Didn't bring the router table. Usually I just use this router by hand. So yeah, a lot of router work. These guys, they're called setup blocks, and they are different dimensions. And I got these on Amazon. They're a great purchase, block scission, and I just keep finding more and more uses for them. I use them a lot, like let's say on the table saw, I want to rip something and I want it to be exactly 2 inches. Rather than trying to fuss with the fence, and I just put this block in between the blade and slap the fence to it, and I know that's exactly 2 inches. If I'm drilling a plate onto a stud or something like that, and I want my drill holes to be 3 inches apart, I just use this. This is 3 inches. Mark, 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 mark. These guys are just absolutely invaluable. Same thing for setting up a router, and if I want the bit to be at a consistent distance from the plate of the router, I'll use these guys, so I just always know I have these repeatable cuts, and these setup blocks are just absolutely super useful. Digital angle finder. Very, very, very useful for music studios where you're cutting precision angles. Flush cut saw. This is very useful for when I'm doing frames, and in particular when I'm doing wood joinery and I'm doing a spline, and you'll see later what a spline is if you don't know what that is, but it's a way of creating a corner joint for floating picture frames, but I've adapted that technique to use for making framed wall panels for acoustic panels. And the flush cut power saw just flush cuts the splines off. You can use it for dowels if you're putting dowel joints and things. And this is the power saw version, so it's just really fast, really clean. Sliding, beveling compound miter saw. So this comes out and slides, so you can cut wider pieces of wood studs for the frames. It will bevel, so you can do a bevel on it, and it will do miters. So if you're doing a 45 on the corner or something, that type of saw is great. This is the battery-powered palm router, and I use this for doing like beveling and just light stuff, round over work, to be able to just create a little bit of a round over edge. You don't do heavy work with this, it'll shit the bed. These are all tons of router bits, and in general, like for example, this is a beveling bit, a chamfer bit that I use for doing 45s. And then I have, this is a round over bit. So when I drill slots or router slots in something, or I have a corner, rather than sanding the corner, which is slow, you can use a round over bit to make it nice and smooth, take off any chaff. And then the other type of bit that I use a lot is this, which is a flush trim bit, has a bearing on it. We'll get into all this stuff, all the details. But yeah, jigsaw. I love this barrel grip. This is the Ryobi HP line, their high performance line. This one's awesome. Probably my favorite tool that I use the most is my brad nailer. So it fires these little pins. They're 18 gauge nails, and you can do different lengths of them. And it's kind of like having an extra set of hands. So if I'm putting a corner together and I'm gluing it, I'll put the glue in, bam, bam, couple brad nails, and it has enough clamping force that it's gonna hold that. They're so tiny that you barely even see them when they're in. There's no head to them. So you can use this as a finishing nailer for putting in trim and all kinds of stuff. But in the acoustics work that I do, the brad nailer, I use it a ton. And this one has a little onboard air compressor, so it's just battery powered. There's no air compressor, there's no cords, there's no nothing. It's just a great little tool. This is my second most favorite tool. This is the stapler. So when we're upholstering using the fabric on all of the acoustic modules, you're putting in hundreds, we're gonna put in thousands of staples in this build. So having something like this, it just has a little belt clip, sits on there. It takes T50 staples, which are easy to get at any hardware store. And in the magazine, you can use all kinds of different depths. And I use different depths of staples, like I use 1/4" staples to put fabric on. But if I'm stapling a joint, like if I'm making a subframe out of 1x2 lumber, or if I'm doing something like putting a piece of 1/8" plywood onto the edge of a frame, I use bigger staples. I use 9/16. So it accommodates all those different depths of staples. This is a new buy. It's a power sander. It's an Orbital sander, so it jitters and it doesn't create swirl marks, so it's really good for finishing. And this is, again, this Ryobi high performance line. It's their top line, and it's epic. So good, so good. And it's just so much, beats sanding anything by hand. Of course, we need a drill and an impact gun. So those, I just have these DeWalt ones that I got. We've got lots of different bits, but one of the most critical bits that I use for drills is this bad boy, which is a, oh my God, what do you call this thing again? Can't believe I can't remember this right now. I remember everything else. This is, oh my God. Okay. This is a bit that I use all the time, and it puts, the screw head absolutely flush with the surface. I will remember what I'm actually talking about at some point, but let's move on for now. This bad boy, which is a Biscuit joiner, and we use this for jointing corners where you want to put something together, but you don't want to use screws or you don't want to use nails. So you use these biscuits and glue them up, and you create a perfect joint that's also very strong, that holds two boards together or joints a corner where you're not going to see any fastening hardware. And the Biscuit joiner here is a little saw that drills or saws the holes out for those biscuits to join. Then we've got lasers. So I'm gonna use 3 different types of lasers for aligning the mic and for aligning where the certain treatment is going. So this is a 3-point laser, just draws a point up, a point forwards and back. And then this guy is a self-leveling laser, so it's gonna put a line across perfectly level and then perfectly up for checking to see if things are level or plumb. These guys are corner clamps, so when I'm making a corner, especially for like all the wooden frames, right? These guys clamp the corner together so they hold it, and as it glues and the glue sets, it creates a perfect corner. And then we've got a big, massive clamp. That guy's a 4-foot clamp. I have a variety of smaller clamps. And then these guys are templates. So these are just pieces that I use when I'm building these subframes for modules that are gonna hold a 2-foot by 4-foot bat. So I use these just because I cut so many of these. I just keep these as a template, so you don't have to measure them every time. And then these are templates for my router to be able to create slots in furniture or in scatter plates. And this is the bigger version. So let's say that you have a 2-foot by 4-foot module, and you want to create a scatter plate. This is the router template that keeps the router going, and you basically strap this on or clamp this on to your piece of plywood that you're working with, and then the router goes on those slots with a flush trim bit, and you router everything out. So that's what these are for, and I made these out of thick MDF because MDF is engineered and it's not going to be fragile like plywood is. So these are really, really nice. It's super hard, super rigid, really precise, and you want to be able to get that type of precision work for using your router. Okay, and then let's go over here. So now I use a ton of these little clamps. This is a specialized jig that I built, and we were talking earlier about splines. Well, imagine this is a piece of wood that you are joining, and this comes down to a corner. Well, what this does is you put your workpiece in there like that, and then you run this over a table saw, and the blade comes in and cuts a slot for the spline to go in. And so that's what this jig is for. We've got a 10-inch Ryobi table saw, and this has a really coarse ripping blade. And for most of the work that I'm doing, I want no tear out. And so this is way too coarse of a blade. So I'm gonna put this guy on. This is a brand new blade. It's an 80 tooth fine cutting blade, which is gonna make sure that we don't get really much or any tear out on the pieces that we're gonna be ripping. And then this is an inclinometer. So if you wanna do bevels and you wanna tilt the blade, you put that guy on, and it tells you digitally exactly what angle the blade's at. That's a useful thing. This is a Featherboard, and that's an aftermarket add-on for this table saw. And what it does when I'm putting pieces through and I'm ripping them, this presses the workpiece up against the blade so that you get a perfect rip without it wavering at all. So if you're doing long rips of like edging or little pieces of wood, the Featherboard really comes in handy. And then this is the last thing. This is a jig that I made. It's for the table saw, and this is what's called a crosscut sled. And so table saws, normally if you have a board going this way, you can't cut that on the table saw. It's super dangerous, so you'd use the miter saw for that. But a lot of times I want to cut things repetitively, and the table saw is just better for that. It doesn't have as much tear out as the miter saw. And so what this crosscut sled does is it fits into the miter slots on the table saw, and I can put a workpiece sideways here, and this fence holds it, and then you just run it through. And so this is really a useful jig to have. So I brought it with me, and yeah. Okay, I remembered what this bad boy was. It's called a Countersink bit. And I just want to go over this for anybody who really isn't a woodworker. The reason why we use this is a lot of the lumber that we're using for these types of builds is 1x lumber. We're using light stuff. So it dimensionally measures at 3/4 of an inch thick. Now, if you just ram a screw into that, it can split it, right? And we don't want that. So we're gonna pre-drill everything. And so we're gonna be pre-drilling as much as possible. And when you pre-drill something and you want the head of the screw to sit nice and flush with the surface of the workpiece, so it's not too far in and it's not sitting out, you just want it to sink nice and flush, and you want that to be just really as nice a looking as you can possibly do it, then that's what this Countersink bit is for. It actually drills out a little pocket for the flared end of the screw head, and then it sits flush. It's even more important if you're drilling anything with MDF, because MDF will definitely split. And so you have to use a Countersink bit for MDF. And it has the ability to set the exact depth to match your screw because it has these little Allen key attachments. So I pop that open, I move this piece forwards or backwards to account for the exact same length of the screw that I'm using, okay? Countersink bit. Okay, that's it. All right, so now I just want to talk about the materials. I had Thomas order all the materials in advance, so they were on site. So when I get here, we can just begin building. But I want to talk about what materials we're using and then how they've been staged. So we'll start down low here. And I said earlier that we are going to be using 1x stock. So these are 1x6s. This is SPF softwood regular wall framing lumber. So SPF is spruce pine fir. This stuff, you can see, it'll twist and warp if you just let it sit, right? So I've had Thomas ratchet strap it all together and then put heavy objects on top of it like nails and stuff like that. And that's gonna keep it really nice while it's been waiting for me to arrive. So if you ever have lumber you need to store and you don't want it to warp or bow on you, ratchet strap it together, put heavy stuff on it. Okay, we've got duct tape to tape the corners so that the fabric that gets wrapped around them isn't gonna wear as much. And then yeah, I had him order his own staples, brad nails, screws, all that stuff. Now we've got a whole bunch of Rockwool, and we're gonna be using 3 different densities of Rockwool. And density is super important. I have an entire video on porous absorption and what densities are used for what aspects of building. But in general, we use everything from light density pink fluffy fiberglass, which is really good for base absorption in deeper treatments, all the way up to this stuff, which is kind of a specialty product, but if you can get your hands on it, it's really useful. It's made by Rockwool, and it's called Cavity Rock. And it's 69 kilograms per meter cubed, which is much higher density than the standard wall framing Comfortbatt, which is 32 kilograms per meter cubed, or the other common product you see used in studios is AFB, the acoustical fire bat, or Safe and Sound. And Safe and Sound is 38 kilograms per meter cubed, and AFB is 40 kilograms per meter cubed. So on the modules that we're gonna be building, there's gonna be a front layer that's a bit higher density, and that's gonna quite dramatically increase the base absorption. And that's a major factor in this small room. So we have 2-inch thick bats and 1.5-inch thick bats that are gonna be used, and that's the higher density cavity rock. And then behind those, we're gonna be using this, and this is the product that most people will be familiar with. This is the Comfortbatt, 32 kilograms per meter cubed, and that's gonna take up the rest of the module. So these pieces of framing lumber that we're using, they're 1x6s, so dimensionally they're 3/4 of an inch thick, and then they are 5.5 inches wide. And that's how deep the trap is gonna be, the module's gonna be. So we're gonna have that front layer of 2 inches of cavity rock followed by 3.5 inches of Comfortbatt for a total depth of 5.5 inches for the wall modules that are gonna be the back wall and the side walls. And then the ceiling cloud is gonna be 5 inches thick. It's just the way the frames are gonna work out. So we're gonna have a 1.5-inch thick cavity rock on the front followed by 3.5 inches of pink fluffy Owens Corning fiberglass. All right, there's our materials. We're ready to start building.
Coming up next, we'll dive into construction of the modules, where you'll get to see how the build and installation process unfold, with some special tips and tricks along the way.